So today we are excited to be here for a Suburban Bourbon episode in Sandusky, Ohio, and we are at
Everwild Spirits.
And we've been talking to the owner, Rick. Rick, I think I've been talking to you for about, almost 6 months. I was so excited to hear about a local distillery here in Ohio, born and distilled. And we're excited to support a local business like we always talk about in Suburban Bourbon, and talk a little bit about the success here and get people to come out and experience what just being here. What a kind of a cool place.
Exactly, and not only is it great spirits, but also we've got a menu here, live entertainment. So we'll talk about all of that. So what's your address here at Everwild Spirits?
We are at 212 Hancock Street in downtown Sandusky, Ohio.
Good deal.
And you're, right in the heart. And when we were driving in, folks at home can't see it, but literally when you drive down the street, you see the lake.
Yep.
So
two blocks from the lake.
That close. So let's talk a little bit about how Everwild came to be, because I think it's kind of a cool story, and certainly what your vision is going forward, and why people should come down here and give this a shot, give it a try.
Sure. So we're a family-owned business. My wife, my brother-in-law, the three of us, partnered together to start this business. It was probably more than 10 years ago that my wife and I knew that we wanted to start a business locally, and we were kind of kicking around a couple dozen different business ideas over that time, just as we had time to sit and think about it. At the same time, I have a personal family history. My great-great-grandfather, a guy named John Kennedy Lynch, was a distiller in upstate New York, Oswego, New York.
Nice.
And I grew up hearing my grandfather talk about his grandfather, right? Talking about Lynch's Golden Wedding Whiskey and J.K.L. and Sons Bourbon, and just a little bit of regret because the government, when Prohibition came about, put them out of business. So we have a few old whiskey jugs and a few kind of heirloom items left over from that, but it was this family legend that kind of percolated up as we were still thinking about starting this local business. And Sandusky's a vacation town. It's a vacation land, they call it. As we thought more and more about what we wanted to do, we wanted to differentiate. We didn't want to be just another restaurant or another bar. And so the distillery seemed like really a perfect fit. There's not a distillery within 60 miles of us, and it's really a destination or an experiential type of a thing that you do when you're traveling and on vacation. So we felt like that was just a really good fit for this area.
And it sounds like we're going to get into certainly the batches that you've so far presented for the first and second batch. But that sounds like at some point you have to do an homage. I think to your is it your great grandfather you said?
Yep.
At some point you got to do something.
Exactly.
Right there in the wall.
You've got to do something. I think in terms of a batch.
So Lynch's Golden Wedding Whiskey, which was a blended whiskey, is something that we could potentially revive.
That'd be kind of cool.
We want to be on the first batch of that.
That's right. Please call Suburban Bourbon. So tell us, obviously down here in downtown Sandusky, you have, again, we'll probably take some pictures, maybe some videos of the distillery that you're building and everything here. Talk to us how this all came to be right here, and your vision for what you wanted this to be for somebody walking in, and I think you talked to us a little bit off camera about even the lockers here, and what kind of vibe you're trying to present here.
So downtown Sandusky is really in the midst of a renaissance that's been going on for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and we wanted to be in the downtown area and contribute to that rather than being in some of the more commercialized areas, south of town. This building was a phenomenal building because, as you can see, there's no columns or any kind of structures that got in the way. We were able to really clear it out and decide how to design the footprint of it exactly to our specifications. So it's a 1928 building. It was originally a Studebaker dealership when it was built. So kind of some neat history there. But we were able to preserve some of the brick and some of the character of it, but at the same time come up with a design that fit with our approach, which is we're a modern bourbon distillery. We're not trying to look back at what was done 100 years ago. We're really more contemporary.
So you want to talk a little bit about your menu and live acts every Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, so we want to be that, as I mentioned, that experience. We want to be that destination. We hear all the time people go down the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky and how much they enjoy that. And as my wife and I have been down there a few times, we loved it. When you go to distilleries in Ohio, no criticism, there's some phenomenal bourbons and other spirits being made by Ohio distilleries, but they don't necessarily have that experience where you can come and kind of go to that brand flagship and spend some time there. So we wanted to develop a space where this was really a place to experience our brand, not just pick up a bottle. And so I think we pulled it off. We have a full menu. We emphasize on appetizers and desserts, or what we call befores and afters. Again, looking at what's happening here already in the restaurant scene, we wanted to differentiate. Most restaurants down here in downtown Sandusky don't offer a lot of desserts, so having a kind of a robust dessert menu allowed us to kind of take the lead on that type of feature. On the appetizer side, my wife and I will go out and we'll look at a great menu and think, geez, I want like 2 or 3 or 4 of these appetizers, and we end up not getting the entree.
Exactly.
So we were kind of leaning into that, right, and saying, okay, well, let's put a relatively small menu together, but everything on it is phenomenal. And you can come down and try 2 or 3 things, maybe try a couple desserts, share that with some family or friends, and it's just not the same engagement as going to a sit-down dinner to get a steak. But it's a really nice way to enjoy, and everything pairs well with the bourbon, right? So everything on that menu has been designed or chosen so it pairs well with either our mixed drinks or the bourbons.
And so to come to visit Everwild, if you're a family or you're just maybe you're not a bourbon aficionado. Just looking over your shoulder there. I mean, you can get anything you want to drink here. I mean, a full line of spirits, variety of food. So clearly, we would recommend you try the Everwild bourbon. But you can also come here just for a nice evening, if that's not your thing necessarily, right? I mean, It sounds like that's what you're trying to create here.
We didn't want a group of friends to come out, and then maybe one of the 4 doesn't like whiskey and say, oh, they don't have beer, they don't have wine, and so let's not go in there. We wanted to make sure we had a full offering for the full group. Our bar team has developed really a phenomenal selection of craft cocktails, and we can talk about those. But those cocktails are very approachable for somebody that doesn't want to drink whiskey straight, right? So we really worked hard to make sure that we had a robust range of choices that feature our bourbon, but maybe are a little more approachable for that newbie or that less experienced bourbon drinker.
And then you have the lockers, which I have to admit, we've been to a lot of establishments. This is a cool feature as a part of the distillery that you don't see. You see it, we've talked about. There's some restaurants, and it's usually wine, but talk to us about the lockers, and obviously extremely successful since you're sold out.
Yeah, so awesome that we were able to sell out in our first month. We have 40 lockers here, what we call our Copper Club lockers. So the Copper Club is really for that bourbon fan, whether that's an individual, a couple of buddies, a husband and wife, or we have some corporate clients that want access to our products, and they want to know that when they come in here that the bourbon that they like is available. We can also stock that locker with other spirits, either Everwild's products or other third-party spirits. But it's a special feature that I think we're obviously for the local folks that are here year-round. They're getting something that they aren't getting elsewhere in this market.
Or Suburban Bourbon.
On
the waiting list.
For our viewers, if you walk in and say hi to Rick, he'll give you a free locker with as much Everwild as you want to drink. Just mention his name. Just kidding.
No.
But it's a phenomenal idea, and we were talking off camera. You don't see this a lot at different places. I think, Rick, as you pointed out, you see it a lot with wine, but what a cool idea. What a cool idea. And you start to build up a community, and a loyal clientele, quite frankly.
Yeah, and that's part of what we also want to do, right, is bring those bourbon fans together, where, a lot of these folks that bought lockers are maybe in an area where they don't have another bar even or other friends that they are enjoying bourbon with. So we have this group of folks that are all kind of sharing something in common, right, in terms of their interest in bourbon. But we'll do some events throughout the year, some barrel picks, some tastings, some classes where they can get together and get to know each other, and that just is that's gonna help build the community and make that whole experience more enjoyable.
So, Rick, years in the future, I mean, where would you hope to be with Everwild? I mean, do you see? Are you I probably know the answer to this, as an entrepreneur, but I mean, are you happy with this right now? Where would you see this going in the future?
Well, we're just getting started, right? We just opened a month ago. I think that from an ambition standpoint, our goal is to be a top producer of bourbon in Ohio. In talking with a lot of other distilleries around the country, distillers, it's a challenge to try and expand, especially trying to expand too quickly. And my focus for our team is to just do a phenomenal job in terms of what we're doing here in the state. I always point out we're not a restaurant, and in terms of what we prioritize, we're not a restaurant. We're not really even a distiller first. We're a customer service business. I need people when they come in here to have a phenomenal experience and want to come back and tell their friends about it too, hopefully. And obviously we need to have great bourbon and we need to have great food in order to achieve that. But our priority is the experience. And we believe that that's how we're going to be successful.
It's interesting. We were talking, so we're going to go to the Bourbon Trail here in a month. And one of the things we talked about, and what we were talking about is just the ones that we went to prior, and the things that stood out to us was the experience. It was certain ones were exceptional, like the tasting room at Four Roses, or the Old World, look and feel, and the way Maker's Mark was.
The magnitude of Jim Beam.
But then there's others that honestly, I will never go back to because it was just. It was less than average. They didn't.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't.
They just wanted to sell you a bottle of bourbon. They weren't really interested in telling their stories.
So it really is. I definitely think you're spot on with your approach, because that's what people remember is when they go, they have a great time, And then you couple it with the bourbon, and that's in which when you have a product that people like and the experience is outstanding.
Well, and I like something you mentioned, Rick, that I think is important too is the cocktails. We've said it on numerous times at our show that nothing is worse, and you probably know this now through your lens of being a bourbon aficionado. Going somewhere and people think if a bartender's not good, they're going to make something really strong and think, well, they'll really like that because they really loaded them up with whatever they ordered. If I wanted that, I'd just do a shot. I want a cocktail. You listed it on your menu. It looks flavorful. It looks like something I can enjoy. And it's amazing how many good bartenders there are and bad bartenders, or places that just didn't put thought into it.
Absolutely right. Being heavy-handed as a bartender is not beneficial to the experience.
Right.
As much as maybe from the outside that may seem like a nice thing. They call it craft cocktail because there's really a skill in terms of that balance of what you're putting together. And it may seem simple, but it's a real art. And we're fortunate to have just some really talented craft people that have put together some great cocktails. So I'm anxious for you guys to try those.
We're excited.
But they're subtle, but they're brilliant. They are phenomenal.
How did you end up with this mash bill? Because I mean, we've tried this and it's outstanding bourbon. But can you take us through the journey of what you did to create Seekers?
A lot of rigorous research, so trying everything. And at the point where we decided that we wanted to explore this further and think about opening a business, we knew we had to get barrels first. If we're going to open the business, we knew we were going to have to source barrels first in order to have a product to release before our own distilled product was mature enough to offer. We very quickly made the decision we didn't want to offer anything less than 4 years old. We don't feel like a bourbon younger than 4 years is mature enough, so we just cut it off right there. So then it was, okay, where do we go out and find high quality 4-year barrels? So we visited, at least a dozen different source providers, tried their barrels, tried their different mash bills, and tried to really understand what our choices were and then come back and make a decision. And it's probably not surprising to folks that know bourbon that we chose MGP ingredients for our bourbon. They are one of the top producers in the world by volume. They make today bourbon for brands like Angel's Envy, Whistle Pig, High West, I don't know, probably 120, 150 brands.
Exactly.
So they are just very skilled at what they do, and we wanted to make sure that while we were offering a source product, that what we offered was of premium quality. As we were talking about earlier, if you had a whiskey or a bourbon and you had a bad experience with the brand, it's really hard to go back and try that again. And we had to ensure that that did not happen. That when people tried what we produced, that they had a great experience and they had some confidence and faith in us as a distiller that we could put out a good product. So we will, as we start to produce here in the next week or two, we will be using the same mash bill formulations. Obviously, it'll be a little different because we're making it here in Northern Ohio and not in Southern Indiana, but we'll aim to hit that same type of flavor profile.
That's interesting.
And it's interesting too. We've got batch 1, batch 2, and it's interesting how everything was done. You said even down to the, they're next to each other in the same rick house, and subtle differences.
And that's something that you can get with craft, small distillers, that you're not going to get with the big national producers. Is you're going to get a batch that's, 2 or 3 barrels. That's hard to really come by that and have it accessible. So this batch 1, which credit to Joe for grabbing those bottles before we sold out. We've sold out of batch 1, unfortunately, or fortunately, in the first month.
Fortunately for you.
Yes.
Exactly. Fortunately for us.
So batch 1 here was a blend of a high rye bourbon at 36% rye, and then a high wheat bourbon that's at 45% wheat. And it's roughly a 2-to-1 blend of the rye bourbon to the wheat bourbon. And as we talked about, what we were looking to do is provide a very approachable bourbon that's great just as a neat pour, but works great on the rocks or in a mixed drink, an old fashioned or what have you. Being that we're in an area that's relatively new to bourbon, we wanted to have a very approachable profile that wasn't going to be too harsh for that newbie, but also still hold up for somebody that is an experienced bourbon drinker and have them say, okay, yeah, that's pretty good stuff. So with only 3 barrels in that batch, as we talked about, it's pretty subtle, but we're seeing these nice, interesting variations from batch 1 to batch 2. And we'll have 3, 4, and 5 coming out later this year, so it'll be fun to see how those all kind of vary from batch to batch.
Yeah. Well, let's
And
go ahead.
I tell you, I could smell. I mean, if you just smell just the difference. I mean, 2 sticks with you a little bit more,
Yep.
not in a bad way. 1 is a little more subtle. But both, we were saying off camera, both have a sweetness to them.
Yeah. And for folks that aren't familiar with the difference between a wheated bourbon and a rye bourbon, right? The wheated bourbon's reputation is that it's a little softer, a little smoother, not as much bite to it. Rye bourbons, people often describe that as spicy or peppery, and maybe a little bit more of a bite up front. And so with this blend, what we were aiming for was to have that wheat present in the front to kind of soften the approach, and you're going to get more of that sweetness on the nose because of the wheat. But then it doesn't pave over the rye, right? There's not so much in there that you lose the complexity of that spicy finish on the backside with the rye. And I feel like we really found the perfect balance. It came out really nice.
I will agree, because I think, like we were saying before, we like to have a neat pour the first time we've tried anything. And this is something that, for any bourbon drinker out there, it has that smoothness, but it's got complexity to it that you don't see in all wheated bourbon. So I think that you've hit a combination here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk about all the time is the finish, and this finish is so smooth.
Very much so. And I think you said something resonated. You can taste both. And you can taste, there is a rye taste, but you taste the wheat.
Yeah, and it kind of happens in sequence.
Yeah.
So.
And then you ended up, you were saying you did a lot of time trying to figure out what proof. So talk us through that, because that's fascinating, that with this, as well as talk to us about the next bourbon that you guys are going to be rolling out.
It's pretty straightforward trial and error, right? You're with both the blend profile, and then as you get into deciding what that proof is going to be and how much water you're going to add, you're doing a series of combinations and trying them. And it was surprising how unanimous the decision was, for us doing this on our batch 1, really the first time. We had proofs from, let's say 44 to 51. We knew we wanted to be in that range. And we all landed on 47. Just blind taste test, everybody picked that one. And we found anything lower than 47, it watered down too much. You start to lose that complexity. And knowing that we wanted to have this approachable bourbon, it was still good at those higher proofs, but we felt it was just maybe a little too hot, where it was going to put people off that weren't seasoned drinkers. So that 47 was that compromise where we didn't forfeit the flavor and the complexity, but it was not too much of a overly hot experience for that.
Yeah, and I think you delivered that for sure. I mean, that's an outstanding bourbon, and you also have another bourbon that you'll be rolling out. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, just a week away, and for rye fans, you'll be glad to hear about this. So we have our toasted oak cask. So this is the same MGP 36% rye. We're not blending it with the wheat this time. It's just only the rye barrels. It's about 4 years, 3 months, 4 years, 4 months old in terms of age. And then we put it in a secondary aging cask. So we had a toasted oak cask made by Speyside Bourbon Coopers down in southern Ohio, in Jackson, Ohio. And I think we have 6 barrels of that we're going to batch up. So we'll get about 2,000 bottles out of that batch.
Nice.
But aged it another 60 days in that toasted oak cask. So if you're not familiar with barrels, there's people talk about char levels and toast. So char levels range from 1 to 4, 4 being the highest. You can actually, I think you can go to 5 too, but most are 3.5 to 4 char for a typical bourbon. And our barrels for the original aging process were number 4 char barrels. But for the toasted process, we had a high toast and then just a light char, so a number 1 char. We already had enough of the impact from the char from the time that it had spent in the barrel already. With the toasting, you're going to pull out some of the vanillins, the caramels, the sweeter sugars that are in that oak. And being that it's a fresh new barrel, it's going to have a quick impact even in that 60 days. So we were testing it pretty frequently to make sure it didn't go too far because it was a new barrel. So that 60-day mark, we think, was right where it needed to be.
So did you plan it to be 60 days, or you just went until this is the date? This is where we want to be.
Got to the point where we started to say, okay, it's really good, and we're nervous about it going too far and losing it, right? So we want to try and time it and hit that peak, of course. So it came out really nice. It has a little bit more of the oakiness to it because of that secondary barrel, but those caramels, I get like caramel corn. I also get like a maple syrup on the nose with that toasted oak. But then being it's only rye, you get a little bit more of that rye than you do with the batch 1.
So what about Seekers? Where's that come from?
So Seekers is, I guess, really it's speaking to both the bourbon aficionado, that's the bourbon hunter. Mm-hmm. It's also speaking to this area, right, our vacation land here, where people are seeking that adventure, seeking that entertainment, seeking that escape from, the daily grind, right? They're here for a week to get away from the other 51 weeks of their life, right? Yeah. So that was kind of maybe a double entendre there.
Very nice.
And then what about Everwild? How did you come up with that? The name, the logo?
So Everwild was like the 2000th name that we came up with for the brand. It was definitely an arduous journey. And again, in branding, you have kind of a couple different choices. You have a lot of bourbons that are named after, as I say, some old dead guy. And then you have a lot of distilleries that are named after a place or location. We knew that we were based here in Sandusky, Northern Ohio, but that's not necessarily a place like Limestone Branch, right? That is associated with great bourbons. So we didn't want to have the name limit people's perception of who we are or how accessible we were. So we're really looking for more of a lifestyle brand. And when we look at the pantheon of brands out there, particularly in Ohio, were not a lot of brands out there in the lifestyle brand category. So we felt like that was a place where we had some room, right? So Everwild is really, again, capturing kind of the essence of your time on vacation, right? You're here in this perpetual vacation land. You're here, again, to kind of find experiences, find excitement, whether you're boating or fishing or kayaking or you're going to the amusement parks or the water parks. That's kind of what Sandusky is all about. So we want it to be representative of that experience.
If anyone's looking for a vice president of marketing, you can contact Rick.
Exactly.
That is probably the most thorough and very cool explanation. Very, very nice. Very nice.
And it's a nice, it's a great bottle, because that's the other thing too. When you're going through stores, so many times people look, and quite honestly, I know
it's a shame. I mean, yeah, you're right.
Like packaging matters, and you guys have really put together an outstanding. I mean, it's the presentation's phenomenal.
Even in here, the blue matches everything. People might not be able to see it on the podcast, but you did well.
And this may sound overly simplistic, but if you look at the bourbon shelf in the liquor store, you see a lot of browns and oranges and earth tones and warmer colors. So we went opposite with the blue, right? We want to stand out. They say that you have about 17 seconds from when somebody walks in and starts looking at a shelf before they make a decision. Mm-hmm. So you've got to differentiate quickly. And about 60% to 70% of the buyers are women. Even if they're buying for a boyfriend or a husband or a dad or somebody else, it's usually more often than not a woman that's in the store. So we didn't want a brand that was too male-centric. We wanted a brand that was going to be more generally appealing to everybody. And we definitely put some more expense into the bottle, to make sure that it had that premium look and feel to it. The quality of the product in the bottle is premium. The packaging has got to be premium too.
Well, should we-
there wasn't enough data analysis done to put
I know.
this company
I'm
together.
impressed. I'm very
I am
impressed.
fascinated by because the reality is
Most people
the
just get
approach.
together and say, we're going to do bourbon.
Exactly. The approach you have taken has been not just well thought out. I mean,
Yeah.
it produced obviously a great bourbon, but everything about this place is somewhere, because we were talking about before, just the way it's laid out, it makes you want to sit down, have a drink, and I love that your menu really caters to that. It's not a sit-down dinner. It's we're having a little bit of food, we're gonna have a drink, and it's got that warm environment that really I know we'll be back.
Absolutely.
Especially when we get one of the next lockers.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear. Thank you. Yeah, we really were going more for lounge than bar.
Yeah. You get that vibe.
We said, we don't want all hard top surfaces. We don't want this to feel like an Applebee's where you're coming in and we're trying to turn you over in 45 minutes and get the next table in, right? We want you to stay, have some time to relax, enjoy it. Bourbon isn't something you want to rush through anyways, right? And same with the food. We want you to stay and kind of enjoy that and experience. I keep coming back to that word. We want you to have that experience.
Well, shall we try the second batch?
Yep.
So this is, I think we tried it off camera, but I think it's worth noting. I think we like both. It's a subtle difference.
Exactly. Very subtle.
And that's the fun of it, right? Is when you get a series of similarly produced but small batches, and you can taste that subtle difference.
Joe and I have said I think in prior conversations that, at least I think I am. I'm not a big neat bourbon guy. I mean, I appreciate it, and I will try it when I'm first trying a bourbon. I usually like it with maybe a splash of water or maybe some ice, that sort of thing, or maybe as a cocktail. But I will tell you, there are very few bourbons for me that I can just drink straight. This is one of them.
Oh, without a doubt.
I can just, literally without any ice cubes or anything. I mean, it's a smooth bourbon. It doesn't overwhelm you. It's 94 proof. But you don't feel overwhelmed after you drink it.
No,
There's
but
not that heat that takes it over.
And I think you articulated it perfectly. It's got that softness. It's very easy from the wheated bourbon side, but it's got that a little bit of spice and that complexity that the rye brings out.
A little sweet too.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, I'm always like, the highest compliment is that person that says, I don't think I've ever had bourbon before, and it's a little old lady or it's somebody that's clearly they feel intimidated because they're with a group maybe that has come in and knows more about it, and they try it and they're like, oh wow, that's really good, and then they keep sipping, and then okay, I know we've had something there when we can take that novice and have it still be approachable for them.
This is definitely a great bourbon. I mean, I'm excited, and I'm excited to see what comes out of the toasted oak, because that, especially, we tend to like the ryes, so like to see that with that extra sweetness to it is going to be a great combination. So you're not sold out of those yet, are you?
That will actually start to go on sale this coming Friday. So we're actually bottling this week, and we'll launch it on Friday.
Well, before we leave, we're definitely going to put an order in for
Exactly.
that.
We will be on that list.
But yeah, 212 Hancock Street in downtown Sandusky. I mean, perfect location. We're going to start. We're going to try some of the cocktails, but it's been a pleasure talking to Rick. Another reason to subscribe to our podcast. So if you're watching this, please subscribe. But it's worth coming down here. Maybe you'll be able to have a chance to meet Rick when you come down and chat a little
see
bit.
see live music.
Live music, yeah, that's the other aspect of it.
Every Friday and Saturday night through October, through the warm weather. It's right on the bay. We get these beautiful, breezy, cool summer nights. We have, a nice little courtyard venue here. It's intimate. We probably get 60, 70 people out there. Most of our acts are all acoustic, one-man shows, so they're not, it's not heavy drums and electric. It's not overpowering. It's a really nice kind of backdrop for the bourbon and the.
Well, in Sandusky, I mean, if anyone who's come up to Sandusky, it's notoriously windy by the lake. So to point out, your courtyard is sort of encased by walls. Sort of, there's one opening, so you're not going to get that if you come here. This is going to be a nice evening. Even though you're by the lake, it looks awesome. The courtyard looks absolutely
and
awesome.
I think you brought up a great point too, which is, a lot of times we go places and if there's a live act, it's overpowering, and the reason you went out with your friends, you got 3-4 couples, was to hang out and talk, and you can't because so to have a backdrop of music adds that extra something special. And like you said, this is a place where I could see spending an entire afternoon just sipping on bourbon, hanging out. And so it really does produce that
We
vibe.
thought it was important to have the community know they can reliably come here for live music every Friday, Saturday night. There's places certainly that have live music, but maybe not reliably, consistently all the time. So we felt that was really important that people know that there's going to be a good act down here, and you know.
And it's a mix of acts, right?
Yeah, yeah. We've had country. Last night we had grunge rock acoustic. We have acoustic piano. So different acts, kind of all melody. We have a couple duos coming in, male-female duos, a female country star singer locally, an up-and-comer. So we have a nice variety of acts. It's all on our website, the event list.
Grunge rock. That's his wheelhouse. I love all rock.
Love
grunge. That's so to
The
see
Gen
that.
X in me.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up on Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Alice in Chains. And,
My favorite band,
Yeah.
Pearl Jam.
yeah.
Rick, just keep us in mind when because this is, again, phenomenal bourbon for anyone who can get their hands on a bottle. When you make double gold in the world spirits industry, you could say we met you first. Think of the little people, because I have a feeling this is really going to explode. It is just really smooth bourbon, man.
It is. It's phenomenal, and quite honestly, you know what you aimed to do, you did,
Yep.
and we're excited to see not just the next one, but obviously, you know, the homage to Great Grandpa's bourbon.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a. We're excited to see the next offerings, and you said it best earlier. You know, you get a chance, you know, to have people try something. This is something definitely I know we will come back to, as you know,
Bring the
people that
wives.
love bourbon. But I'm sure you're going to have more fans than us. This is fantastic.
Thank you. That's a high compliment. Thank you.
So thank you very much. We're going to have a chance to meet one of your bartenders now, correct? And we'll
Thanks.
we'll have some
Thanks.
cocktails. So, we're back now. We're going to be talking to Emily, one of the lead bartenders here at Everwild, and we're going to start talking about some cocktails, which we enjoy all the time.
Yeah, we do enjoy them. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Emily.
My name's Emily. I am a local to the area, Sandusky native, born and raised. I'm the manager here, or the bar manager here at Everwild. I've been bartending for 11 years now. Yeah, so I've done a lot of like the craft cocktail making, which is it's a passion of mine. I really enjoy what I do. I love getting to meet new people. I like when people tell me, you know, I'm not sure if I like bourbon, so I'm like, you know what, try this. And they tell me what they like and they don't like, and we always come up with something that suits every palate. So super fun job. Love it.
So what are some of the cocktails that we're going to try today? What are the you know 2 or 3 on the menu that you know are just winners with the crowd here at Everwild?
Is our #1 seller by far. We craft that with a house-made Demerara simple syrup. So we use a Demerara sugar, which is similar to like a brown sugar with a little less molasses in it. And we use an aromatic bitters. That's by far our best seller. We're going to make one of those. And then I'm also going to do a honey vanilla bourbon sour for you, which has been our second best seller, and a strawberry basil smash. Those two kind of go neck and neck, week to week. They're like in a race, which one's gonna sell better. The honey vanilla bourbon sour is a very interesting texture. It's kind of got that creamy frothiness to it without using the raw egg. So it's something a little bit different. It's unique.
That's good, because
That's
we
good,
have a
'cause-
good experience with the raw egg taste,
We're
just
not-
to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes raw egg gets that like almost like a wet dog smell to
Yes,
it.
thank
Yes,
you.
it does. It does.
I said that before,
Yeah.
like it's been raining out or something like that.
So we actually use, we use a vegan alternative to that.
Nice.
So it doesn't have the smell, it doesn't have a taste, it still gives it that texture though.
Emily, you're already the best bartender I've
I
ever worked
know.
with in my life.
what I love too is just like when we talked to Rick, a lot of thought put into how it's done.
Yep.
And quite honestly, we've said this. We've had old fashions at many places. No two are alike, and we're definitely excited to try one here at
And she's going
Everwild.
to smoke the old fashioned for us.
Yep,
Awesome.
we're gonna do a smoker.
So let's get to it. So we actually just watched Emily make some very tasty drinks. We're very excited to get started. And we're going to start with the old fashioned, which is smoked.
Exactly. I mean, and we've said this on, I think, every single podcast. Like old fashions, one of the most popular drinks that you'll see in the bourbon world, and no two are the same.
Never the same,
So
right.
tell us how you made this old fashioned.
So we used our bourbon, our Seeker's bourbon, and then a house-made Demerara simple syrup made with the Demerara sugar, some Angostura aromatic bitters, not the orange, and then Luxardo cherry, and then an orange peel, which we express, and then we also rim the glass with it as well.
Talk a little bit about the sugar. You said it's a brown sugar, correct?
Yes, it's very similar to a brown sugar, but it's like a coarse grain, so it's not as fine, and there's not quite as much molasses in it, so it's not as sticky. Gives it more of like a richer flavor than a white sugar would, but not as heavy on the molasses as a brown sugar.
Nice. Let's give it a try.
All right, cheers.
And I love smoked. I love the smoked bourbons or the smoked bourbon drinks, Manhattans and old fashions. That's really tasty.
This is a very smooth old fashioned, and it's funny, the bitters matter. There's so many different ways you can go with it, but this is an absolutely well balanced.
And this
drink.
is batch 2.
Correct. Yep, that's our second batch.
So smooth. And I tell you, like, so having the taste of both batches, which we said earlier, you could just drink straight. Right? It's smooth enough. Great for drinks.
Oh God,
Clearly.
Oh, this mixes so perfectly with this drink.
Good. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, our Seeker's bourbon has been very versatile in the cocktails that we can make with it, which makes my job a lot of fun. Because I can do a lot of different things with it. So.
Ask for Emily. She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Knows what she's doing. This
She's
is
made
good.
a drink or two, I'm guessing, from this.
Couple.
So for our next drink, what do we have here?
So those are our bourbon smash.
Which you made one special for me.
I did. Yeah. We don't want any incidents.
I'm allergic to strawberries, so she had to modify. But go ahead and tell us about the bourbon smash.
Bourbon. We use a little bit of simple syrup and then a hand squeezed lemon juice. And then traditionally the one on the menu is the strawberry with basil, fresh basil as well. Yours is blackberry with basil.
Nice. Oh, that's really. You could drink this all summer.
It's refreshing.
Very much so.
And it's not really like a mixed drink. There's not a lot of mixer in there. It's still bourbon heavy. The bourbon still shines through on it. You just kind of accent the flavors a little different, but it's refreshing.
You can see on the patio, you can see the water. It's a nice summer day. Like, this is an outstanding drink.
This is really good.
It's a great lakeside drink.
You can taste the basil.
Yeah,
That's a nice garnish on here.
little subtle hint of the basil.
So how popular is this one? So you said the old fashioned is is your top.
So that, the smash and then our honey vanilla bourbon sour go neck and neck. Like every week they're competing with each other. Like this one sold 2 more this week, this one sold 5 more this week. So I would say it's tied for our second most popular.
Really good.
Yeah, but this is a great drink, and I will say, like, I don't know how it tastes with strawberries. I'm assuming it's amazing, but with the blackberries, it's a great option.
Blackberry goes really well with bourbon too. So actually when I first made it and we were putting it on the menu, I made it with blackberries as well because I was like, I like blackberries and bourbon together. So I was just curious, but I liked it with the blackberry too.
So now our final cocktail. Tell us a little bit about it, Emily.
So this is one of the most, I think, unique cocktails on our menu. We use a house-made honey simple syrup. It has a vanilla liqueur in it, and then our Seeker's bourbon, hand-squeezed lemon juice, and then the aquafaba, which is like a vegan alternative to the egg white. So it gives it, you can see that layer of that foam, that creaminess on top there, without making it too heavy, taking out the raw egg component, and on top is the freeze-dried black currant powder.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier. I'm not a fan. I don't think you're a fan of the egg white on top. Some people like it, and that's fine. I don't care.
I
for
don't
the
prefer
taste.
it.
So this is going to be an interesting alternative. And I think, Emily, you said you're not a big fan of it either.
I don't like the egg white as much because I just don't like the aroma. I think the smell of it, like it doesn't usually affect the flavor of the drink too much for me. It's just the smell. And like so much of the flavor is the aroma, so.
Right. Let's give it a try.
Get rid of that.
Ooh.
different, huh?
It's different.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
It's really sweet.
It is. It's a sweeter one.
Yeah.
When people say they want an after dinner, I will recommend either
God,
that
yes.
or something more on like the chocolate side. It just depends on what they're looking for, but it is a sweeter one.
Definitely.
Get that
And that vanilla.
in there.
Yeah.
And I love vanilla stuff. So
That
I
is
mean, it's
really,
very.
really
It
good.
does. It almost feels like a dessert that you're having. Not
I think
like-
both
so
our
I
wives
think
would like
I think
this.
drinking it after dinner is an awesome. It's an awesome recommendation. But I can see where this could compete.
Both our wives would like this.
Oh, gotcha. They would like both the last two.
All wives love that.
Yeah. We're not your demographic necessarily, but here, yeah, that's it.
Husbands like it too. Usually what happens is the wife will order one and then they're like, what's that pink stuff on top? I don't want it. Their husbands say that, right? And then they try a sip of it and they're like, actually, I want one of those too. So we see a lot.
Or do they're like, hey, I want one of those.
Hey, can you order me one? I was just making fun of it.
Exactly. I was just making fun of you. Can you just move that over a little bit?
You said something, and it almost tastes like you're drinking a dessert. I don't know how to describe that. Not like, it's not overly sweet, but it tastes like a dessert
It does.
liqueur.
The
Like
van-
something you've, I don't know.
The vanilla in
Something
it
you've
makes me
ordered.
think dessert.
So yeah, the honey and the vanilla in there, but it's still like balanced enough with the lemon juice that it's not like you're just drinking like a syrup, right?
Exactly.
But it is kind of almost like reminiscent of like some sort of like a vanilla cake or like a honey pastry or something like that.
And what's on the top? You were saying that off camera. What's the garnish you have on top?
That's a freeze-dried black currant powder.
I mean, explain what that is, or what's that supposed to taste like?
Is I mean it's like a grape almost, right? But it's a freeze-dried powder. It does add to the color, but it almost just adds kind of like a little bit of zest to tone down that vanilla and honey. So it kind of it's just like a balancing agent, more or less. A little bit of the tang, if you will.
And even though it has that kind of dessert kind of flavor, it's an easy drinker that you could also have on the patio. I mean, it really does. I can see why it rivals the Smash, because I can see on a warm day, ordering one of these.
Yeah, it's like a sweeter alternative to, instead of having something that sits super heavy, like a chocolate martini or something, right? Like those sit heavy, and this is still like a sweet drink and dessert without being quite as dense.
Yes, and truth be told, I wouldn't want to order a drink with egg whites on top sitting outside for very long, right? No. You don't smell or taste that like you do with those sorts of drinks.
can't smell it, right?
None at all. You were right. You were right. So what's the name of that again, the alternative?
So it's aquafaba,
Aquafaba. So is that...
and when I tell you what that is, you're gonna be like, what the heck? It is juice from chickpeas, because chickpeas are so high in protein that when you shake them vigorously enough, they behave like an egg white does because they're so high in protein. So it gives you that creamy frothiness to the drink in the same texture, but without the raw egg.
We had our first bourbon drink with chickpeas.
I know.
A new milestone in Suburban Bourbon. Thank you, Emily.
Exactly. And you stand back going, how? I don't understand.
It's the juice from chickpeas just because it's so high in protein.
That is a good drink. Now, where did you come up with this? Who thought of this drink?
Actually, you know what? This is funny that you say this, because this was probably like a 2 o'clock in the morning thing. Like 2 months before we opened, and I was like, I want some kind of sour. Or like, what am I gonna do? And then it came to me, I was thinking, because I have honey on the menu with other things, and I was like, I wonder if we put honey and vanilla together. And I got up at like 2 in the morning and made one. And it wasn't quite perfect, but our master distiller, Mike, he and I put our heads together and we came up with the perfect recipe for that.
Awesome.
Well,
Awesome. Well, again, Emily,
you hit this spot on. Like, this is a great drink, and it's not one that you see. Like, I have never had anything like this.
It's unique. And it's easy for both, I think people who like bourbon like it, but also people who are like, I don't like bourbon and I don't want a Manhattan and I don't want an old fashioned. 10 times out of 10, I serve them that and they're like, this is good.
And no, and you were right. The Katie and Jody factor. They would drink this. If you gave this to them, they would have no idea there was bourbon in it.
right.
We're gonna do that to you,
That's
ladies. We're gonna dupe you. Exactly.
and it's proof too that a good bartender who knows what they're doing can make great drinks, right? I mean, and you are. I mean, the fact that you made this up and you sort of tested it, I'm sure, and probably tweaked it a little bit. I mean, it's a testament to your knowledge of the craft.
Thank you.
Makes a difference. It really does.
And I think that's the other thing too is that you know, we go to so many places and not all drinks are the same. Like old fashioned, there's a recipe and you can follow it, but it's not always made the same. Yours was extremely well
what you're
balanced.
doing. You could
It's a
tell.
great
Yeah.
drink. But this is also the craft cocktails. Everyone says that they do it, but this is truly like craft cocktail 101. Like this is a great concoction that you just don't get anywhere.
You can ask the staff. They always crack up because, like, if we're slow on a slow day, I'm always back here, like, whipping up something. They're like, "Oh, what's Emily doing now?" Like, always bringing in new things. I love it. It's super fun. It's a passion of mine.
So we encourage you, come out to Everwild Spirits here at 212 Hancock Street in downtown Sandusky. As we said, you can see the lake rolling as you roll in and park, but it's a great location. Not just tables, you can lounge, enjoy yourself. You can be outside and inside. Live music.
Live music every
Yes.
Friday and Saturday
Yes.
all the way through October or until October. But
You need to get out here, absolutely. And you know they're going to be tapping and actually selling a batch 3 soon.
Toasted oak. Yep. Toasted oak.
it's coming out.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Technically the third one, but yes, first toasted oak. Get out here. It's worth the drive on a weekend if you're in the Cleveland area. I think it took us about 45 minutes to get out here. It's really not far, and it's worth the trip. And you get to meet Emily. So what could be better on Saturday?
And definitely, and Emily, these drinks
Yes,
that
thank
you
you.
made, not all bartenders are the same. You're fantastic. The bar you're managing is outstanding. So we're excited to come back. But thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.